Ethan Brooks woke to the sound of a woman's unfamiliar voice drifting through his kitchen. When he opened his eyes, shock slammed through him. A stranger stood barefoot on his wooden floor, wearing nothing but his white dress shirt, as if she belonged there. Morning light framed her calm, commanding posture. And for a moment, Ethan wondered if he was still caught in some fever dream left over from the storm. She turned toward him with a measured expression. So she said, voice smooth but edged, "You really don't remember last night." Ethan scrambled upright, heat climbing his neck as fragments of the previous night clashed in his mind, and the rain, the wrecked car, the woman trapped inside. But he couldn't reconcile that terrified figure with the composed one now stirring coffee in his kitchen. Before he could form a coherent question, she delivered the blow with unnerving calm. "I'm the woman you dragged out of a burning car," she said. "And the woman whose company owns this house." The words snapped the morning in half. Ethan stared at her, caught between disbelief and rising dread. Mia's soft footsteps interrupted them. His 8-year-old daughter peeked into the room, stared at the stranger, then burst into a delighted giggle. "Daddy, why's that lady wearing your shirt?" Ethan stammered an explanation, but the woman stayed unruffled, sipping his coffee, as though she had every right to be there. When he offered to drive her anywhere she needed, she answered calmly, "My driver's been outside since 6 o'clock." She could have left long ago, yet she chose to stay watching him with a gaze that felt like an assessment. Then she pulled a stack of crisp bills from her wallet, $2,000 at least, and set them on the table. "For the trouble," she said. "For everything." His jaw tightened. Ethan shoved the money back toward her, anger simmering under his usually steady exterior. "I don't want your money," he said. "That's not why I helped you." She studied him with a cool, unfazed curiosity. Most men would have taken it. Ethan met her eyes steady and unyielding. "I'm not most men." Something shifted in her expression, a flicker of recognition at a force she wasn't used to being challenged by. Silence stretched before she finally moved toward the door. She paused, hand-brushing the frame, then turned back with a softer, almost human glimmer in her eyes. "My name is Emma," she said quietly. "Emma Caldwell. And I won't forget yours, Ethan Brooks." Then she left the door closing with a softness that felt more like a promise than an exit. The small house fell still, but Ethan knew deep down that this was no ending. It was the beginning of something he never saw coming. Ethan tried to bury the morning behind a wall of work, but the image of Emma Caldwell in his kitchen clung to him with the persistence of smoke. Even as he fixed appliances and rewired panels across town, her voice, her calm, her impossible presence kept slipping back into his thoughts. By midday, he was working at Mia's school, comforted by the familiar sounds of children playing, one voice, always unmistakably his daughter's. Then the unmistakable purr of a luxury engine cut through the air, wrong for this quiet place. He stepped into the hallway just as a sleek, black sedan pulled up. Emma emerged in a white blazer and sunglasses, radiating a force that made conversations around the playground falter. Without hesitation, she walked straight toward him. "We need to talk," she said, her tone too controlled to ignore. When Ethan tried to brush her off, she pulled out her phone and showed him security footage, him sprinting into the storm, dragging her from her burning car. "You saved my life," she said quietly, "and I tried to pay you for it." Her eyes shifted to the playground, where Mia ran laughing with her friends. Something in Emma softened. "She's your daughter," she murmured, and Ethan answered simply, "She's everything." Emma nodded as though that truth struck deeper than she expected. When she faced him again, her voice carried something raw beneath its steadiness. "You didn't just save me. You reminded me that not everything can be bought." The wind stirred, carrying the sound of children's laughter through the stillness between them. Emma stepped closer, her expression firm, decisive. I'm not here to apologize. I'm here because I intend to make things right. Ethan felt a shift in the air, heavy and inevitable, as if something larger than both of them had been set in motion. And for the first time, he understood that whatever storm he'd pulled her from was nothing compared to the one she was bringing into his life. Ethan didn't know what make things right meant for a woman like Emma Caldwell, but he felt its weight long before she explained. The next morning, after dropping Mia off at school, he returned home to find a black SUV parked outside his faded gate. For a second, adrenaline spiked old instincts unwanted. Then the back door opened, and Emma stepped out polished and poised, as if she belonged in every place she entered, even the ones too small for her world. She didn't bother with greetings. "I need 10 minutes," she said already, walking toward his porch. Inside, she looked around the modest living room, the patched walls, the aging sofa, the coffee table he'd sanded down himself, taking everything in with unreadable eyes. Ethan braced himself for judgment, but it never came. Instead, she pulled out a file folder, placed it on the table between them, and said, "As of yesterday, I purchased the property you're renting." His breath stopped. He stared at her, stunned, unsure whether to feel angry or afraid. Before he could react, she continued, "And as of this morning, I transferred the deed to your name, free and clear." Ethan stood the force of her words slamming into him, harder than any punch he'd taken in his youth. "You had no right," he said, voice tight. "This is my life, my home." Emma didn't flinch. "And you saved mine." She stepped closer, expression raw beneath her controlled exterior. "I wasn't repaying a debt. I was correcting a mistake. A very personal one." Her voice dipped softer. "I treated you like a problem to be processed. You treated me like a human being." Ethan turned away, pacing because stillness felt impossible. Mia's drawings hung on the wall beside him, bright suns, crooked hearts, a stick figure version of him labeled "my hero." He exhaled sharply. "I don't want your charity." Emma shook her head. "This isn't charity. This is investment." When he shot her a glare, she clarified. "Not in business, in people. The right people." Ethan stared at her, searching for the motive behind her words. But all he saw was conviction and exhaustion. She moved to the window, and then looking out at the narrow yard where Mia's forgotten jump rope lay twisted in the grass. "When I was a kid," she said quietly, "I lived in 5 different foster homes. People either ignored me or tried to fix me with money. No one ever listened." She glanced back at him. "You listened. And you didn't even know who I was." Ethan softened despite himself. He had an expected vulnerability from a woman whose name appeared on billboards downtown, but here she was, unvarnished and painfully real. Emma took a breath, then placed another document on the table. "This is what I really came for." Ethan picked it up reluctantly. At the top, the Brooks Foundation. His chest tightened. She explained carefully, each word chosen with precision. A fund dedicated to supporting single fathers. Financial grants, training programs, childcare support, all under your name. Ethan blinked, unable to speak. "Why me?" he finally whispered. Emma held his gaze. "Because you represent something this world forgets, quiet strength. Integrity without an audience. And because men like you rarely get help, even though you're the ones holding everything together." The room felt too small, the air too thick. Ethan sat slowly, his mind racing through. Every night, he stayed awake worrying about bills. Every morning, he tied Mia's shoes while pretending everything was fine. Every moment, he fought to keep their life afloat. No one had ever seen any of that. Until her. Silence stretched between them, heavy, but not uncomfortable. At last Ethan spoke. If I agree, we do it my way. No cameras, no PR stunts, no using people as marketing tools. Emma's lips curled into the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. Deal, she said without hesitation. The moment felt like the ground shifting beneath both of them. She extended her hand. He hesitated, then took it. Her grip was firm, steady, equal. Just as she turned to leave, Mia burst through the front door backpack, bouncing breathless from excitement. She froze when she saw Emma. "Hi," Mia said cautiously. Emma knelt, meeting her at eye level. "Hi, Mia. I'm a friend of your dad's." Mia beamed instantly. Trust came easily to her gentle heart. "Are you going to help my daddy?" Emma's expression softened in a way Ethan had never witnessed. "Yes," she said quietly, "if he'll let me." Mia grinned and threw her arms around Emma in an unexpected hug. Emma stiffened, startled, then slowly returned the embrace, something fragile flickering across her face. When Mia dashed off to show Ethan her newest drawing, Emma stood in the doorway watching her go. "She's remarkable," she murmured. Ethan nodded. "She's my whole world." Emma looked at him, then something unspoken shimmering in her eyes. "I'll send the full documents tomorrow," she said softly. "This is only the beginning, Ethan." And as her car pulled away, leaving silence in its wake, he felt it too. An invisible shift, a door opening to a future he never imagined. A future that now had her name written all over it. The launch announcement came faster than Ethan expected. 3 weeks after Emma first walked into his home with life-altering papers, he found himself standing backstage at a downtown convention center, somewhere he had never imagined belonging. The hall beyond the curtain buzzed with energy. Laughter, camera shutters, the hum of important people wearing expensive shoes. He tugged at the collar of the suit Emma's assistant had insisted he wear. It didn't feel like his skin. It felt like armor borrowed from another man's life. Beside him, Mia sat swinging her legs, her dress covered in tiny yellow flowers she'd chosen herself. "Daddy," she whispered, "do you think they know your name out there?" Ethan chuckled tightly. "I hope not." But Mia only grinned, unbothered by his nerves. To her, he was always the tallest, strongest person in the room, no matter how the world measured him. Before he could calm the trembling in his hands, a production assistant rushed over. "Mr. Brooks, you're on in 5 minutes." Ethan froze. "I thought I was only attending," he said, voice low. "Miss Caldwell wants you on stage," the assistant replied, already moving away. Ethan exhaled sharply, a wave of dread washing over him. He didn't do stages. He did broken wiring, creaky pipes, and quiet rooms where no one watched. Not this. Then the lights in the hall dimmed. Music swelled. The crowd hushed like a single creature holding its breath. Through the small opening in the curtain, Ethan saw Emma step onto the stage. She stood tall beneath the spotlight, composed powerful every inch, the CEO the world knew. Yet something warmer lingered around her edges, now something less polished and more human. "Good evening," she began, her voice steady. "Tonight, we launch something personal, something born from a moment that changed my life." She paused, letting the silence settle. "The Brooks Foundation exists because of one man. A man who saved my life, asked for nothing, and reminded me what character looks like." She turned toward the wings, her gaze finding him with quiet force. "Ethan Brooks, please join me." The applause hit him like a wave. Quick, loud, too big. His legs felt heavy, but Mia nudged him with a whisper. "Go, Daddy. That's..." He swallowed hard and walked onto the stage, the lights blinding him for a moment. Emma met him halfway, handing him a microphone with a faint smile, meant for him alone, a promise that he wasn't standing there alone. "Say something," she whispered. Ethan stared at the crowd, hundreds of faces, all expecting wisdom from a man who still patched his own roof with leftover shingles. His pulse thundered in his ears. Then he spoke, his voice rough at first, then stronger. I'm not great with speeches. I fix things, pipes, lights, whatever's broken. A ripple of laughter drifted through the room, soft and supportive. He drew a breath. But being a single dad taught me that you don't need money to be rich. You just need people who believe in you. Moments that show you why you keep going. Emma watched him openly now, eyes unreadable except for the pride gleaming beneath the surface. That night, Ethan continued, I didn't save Emma because I expected anything. I saved her because it was right. And somehow that moment changed everything. The hall was silent, hanging on each word. This foundation isn't about me. It's about every parent doing their best while feeling invisible. You're not invisible. You matter. And now you have support. The standing ovation that followed washed over him like a storm breaking open. Ethan stepped back, overwhelmed, chest tight with emotion he couldn't name. Emma took his hand quietly, without spectacle, steadying him as much as he steadied her. Later, when the event ended and the noise faded into distant echoes, they found themselves in a quiet hallway behind the venue. Mia had fallen asleep on a nearby bench. Emma stood close, the soft gold of the overhead lights warming her features. She reached into her purse and handed Ethan a small box. Inside was a pen engraved with the words, "For the man who did not sell his kindness." "You didn't have to," he murmured. "I wanted to," she replied, her voice softer than any he had heard from her before. For a long moment, neither spoke. The air between them held something delicate, something newly blooming. Then from behind them, someone cleared their throat, a photographer asking for a final picture. They stepped into frame, professional and poised, but their hands brushed lightly, a touch so small it could have been accidental. It wasn't. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm neither of them acknowledged, but both felt. Ethan returned to his repair jobs, his hands steadying frayed wires and busted pipes the way they always had. Yet something in him felt different. Lighter, steadier, as if a door had opened somewhere inside him. Meanwhile, Emma vanished into boardrooms, negotiations, and the relentless tempo of corporate life. But every few days, a message arrived from her assistant requesting Ethan's input for the foundation, or a car would appear at his curb to bring him to some meeting where his presence mattered more than he was willing to admit. Despite the new pace, Ethan clung to the life he knew. He still cooked simple dinners with Mia, still fell asleep on the sofa, after long days still counted every dollar to stretch things just a little farther. But even in the quiet moments, Emma drifted into his thoughts, her steady voice on stage, her softened expression. When she watched Mia, the unguarded look she gave him in the hallway after the launch. A look that felt like a secret. One afternoon, after picking Mia up from school, Ethan unlocked the apartment door only to find a sleek envelope on the floor, slid under the crack. He recognized the embossed seal immediately. Caldwell Innovations. His breath caught. He tore the envelope open and found a simple message handwritten in elegant black ink. Meet me at the old pier at 7. No signature. None needed. Mia tugged his sleeve, curious, but Ethan hid the letter with a gentle smile. Work stuff, kiddo. She accepted the explanation without suspicion, humming as she emptied her backpack. But Ethan's pulse thrummed with confusion. Why the pier? Why secrecy? Why now, by 7? And the sky was painted in deep purples and fading gold. The pier stretched out over the water, abandoned by most, except the occasional fisherman. Ethan spotted her near the railing, wind tugging at her dark coat hair, pulled back in a way that made her look younger, almost fragile. But she straightened as soon as she heard his footsteps, her posture rising back to its familiar, commanding precision. "You came," she said. Relief flickered across her features so quickly he almost missed it. "You asked," he replied. Emma inhaled deeply, her breath visible in the cold air. "I didn't call you here for foundation work or business." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I came because there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have said before any of this began." Ethan leaned against the railing beside her, the boards creaking under his weight. The water below churned softly. "Then tell me." She hesitated. Emma Caldwell, who commanded rooms full of executives, who negotiated multi-million-dollar deals without blinking, hesitated. "I wasn't honest with you about why that night changed everything for me," she said finally. "It wasn't just the accident. It was who you are." Ethan waited silent, steady. "I've spent my whole life surrounded by people who wanted something from me. People who saw me as a position, a paycheck, a stepping stone. Even kindness came with strings attached." Her voice thinned, betraying cracks beneath her confidence. "And then there was you. A man who ran into fire for a stranger. A man who refused money he desperately needed because dignity mattered more." She turned toward him, her eyes bright, unguarded. "You scared me, Ethan. Because you made me realize that for the first time in years, I wanted someone to see me, not the CEO. Me." The confession struck him like a tide. He looked at her fully now, really seeing her not as the intimidating titan who showed up in a black sedan, not as the woman who bought his house behind his back, but as someone who had clawed her way through loneliness so long, it had become a second skin. "I didn't think you needed anything from anyone," Ethan murmured. "I don't," she said, breathless. "Except maybe I do. Maybe I need someone who reminds me what matters when the world forgets." A beat of silence pulsed between them, fragile as glass. Then Ethan spoke, his voice low. "Emma, I never asked for anything from you. But that doesn't mean I don't feel something." Her breath hitched. He continued softly, "I just didn't think I had any right to." The wind swept past them, lifting strands of her hair carrying the scent of the sea. She stepped closer, slowly, as though afraid to break whatever delicate truth hovered between them. "Ethan," she whispered, "you have more right than you know." Just as she said it, footsteps echoed behind them, quick, excited. Daddy Mia's voice sliced through the moment. She ran toward them with a sketchbook in hand, waving eagerly. Emma straightened, startled, instinctively retreating a step. Ethan caught Mia before she barreled into embracing her with a soft laugh. "Look what I drew," Mia announced proudly. Ethan knelt, glancing up at Emma, who watched with an expression caught between awe and fear. Mia flipped open the sketchbook. Inside was a drawing of 3 figures, Mia, Ethan, and Emma, all holding hands, all smiling. Ethan felt the ground shift again, deeper this time. Emma stared at the illustration, her voice barely audible. "Is that me?" Mia nodded brightly. "I drew us because you make Daddy smile." Emma's breath left her in a single trembling exhale, and Ethan knew with startling clarity that nothing between them would ever be simple again. The days after the pier felt like walking a tightrope suspended between 2 worlds, one Ethan understood and one he wasn't sure he belonged to. He threw himself back into work with a determination that bordered on desperation, as if fixing leaky pipes and rewiring dim kitchen lights could anchor him to the life he'd built. Yet the memory of Emma on that pier haunted him. The wind in her hair, the tremor in her voice, the unmistakable truth in her eyes when she said she wanted to be seen. But the world didn't wait for him to figure out his heart. Within a week, Caldwell Innovations released the official press statement announcing the Brooks Foundation, and suddenly Ethan's once quiet routine became a small storm. Journalists called his prepaid phone until it died. Local bloggers tried to photograph him picking Mia up from school. His clients, people who never cared where he came from, looked at him now with a strange mix of admiration and suspicion, as though he had stepped outside the boundaries of who they believed he was allowed to be. Ethan hated it. One evening, after finishing a repair job on the west side of town, he returned home to find Mia on the couch, drawing her brow furrowed in deep concentration. She looked up smiling brightly. "Daddy, Miss Emma called. She said to tell you she needs your advice for tomorrow's meeting." Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. He'd purposely avoided calling Emma back all day. He wasn't ready, didn't know what he was ready for. He was still wrestling with that thought when headlights swept across the living room windows. A sleek, dark car pulled up outside the house. Before he could react, a knock sounded on the door. Ethan's breath stalled. Emma stood on the porch wearing no blazer, no corporate mask, just a soft sweater jeans and an expression that held a quiet fatigue he'd never seen on her before. She looked almost human and impossibly beautiful. "Can we talk?" she asked. He stepped aside, letting her in. Mia bounded over and hugged her without hesitation. Emma froze for a heartbeat, then gently returned the embrace before Mia scampered off to fetch her sketchbook again. When they were alone, Emma took a slow breath as if steadying herself. "I didn't mean for your life to become chaotic. I should have anticipated the media reaction." She paused. "I'm sorry, Ethan." He leaned against the counter, crossing his arms, more for protection than comfort. "This is your world, Emma, not mine. I fix people's sinks. I don't make headlines." A flicker of hurt crossed her face, but she held her ground. "That's exactly why I need you," she said quietly. "The foundation, our work, it has to stay grounded. It has to stay real. And you are the most real person I know." Ethan exhaled frustration, mixing with something dangerously close to longing. "You can run billion-dollar companies. You can stare down entire boardrooms. But you can't expect me to step into a world like this overnight." "I'm not asking you to become someone else," she replied. "I'm asking you not to walk away." The words landed heavily between them, fragile and raw. Before Ethan could answer, Mia burst back into the room, clutching her drawing. "Miss Emma, look." She held up the picture, this time with more detail, more color, the three of them drawn again, but now standing in front of a house with a big sun overhead. Emma's breath hitched. She knelt. "This is beautiful, sweetheart." "Daddy said you're helping people," Mia chirped, "and that means you're good. So I drew us together." Then, with innocent certainty, she added, "Are you going to stay for dinner?" Emma blinked, caught completely off guard. Ethan watched her heart twisting at the uncertainty softening her strong features. She glanced up at him, waiting for permission, hoping for it. He hesitated only a moment before nodding. "Yeah," he said softly. "Stay." Dinner was simple roasted chicken potatoes and Mia's favorite buttered corn. But the atmosphere felt almost unreal. Emma, usually poised and calculating, laughed when Mia told her stories. She helped set the table. She washed dishes with her sleeves rolled up, standing shoulder to shoulder with Ethan in a tiny kitchen far humbler than any room she was used to. Yet she didn't complain. Not once. After Mia went to bed, Ethan walked her to the door. The house was quiet the night outside, cool and still. Emma paused on the porch, turning to him with a look he couldn't decipher. "Thank you," she said softly, "for letting me in tonight, for letting me be myself." Ethan swallowed. Is that hard for you? She nodded, slow and honest. Harder than you think. For a moment, neither moved. Then she stepped closer just enough that he could feel the warmth of her breath in the cold air. I'm not done fighting for this, she whispered. For what, he asked, voice unsteady. She looked up at him with eyes unguarded, vulnerable in a way he'd never seen. For us. Then she walked away, leaving Ethan standing in the doorway, with his heart pounding, and the quiet realization that everything in his life was about to change again, and this time, it was no accident. The shift happened slowly then, all at once. In the weeks after that quiet dinner, Ethan found Emma woven into the edges of his life in ways he never expected. She joined foundation meetings with a steadiness that made others defer to her. Yet, she always glanced at Ethan first, silently checking if he agreed. She visited Mia's school once, bringing donated books for the library, and Mia bragged for days that Miss Emma is basically family. Ethan pretended not to react, though the words settled deep in his chest, warm and terrifying all at once. But the world beyond their small circle had sharper edges. The more the foundation grew, the more the media circled. One evening, after finishing a repair job, Ethan found a cluster of reporters standing near his driveway, cameras ready. He froze, pulse spiking. They shouted questions about the foundation, about Emma, about their relationship. Ethan didn't answer. He simply turned and left through the back alley, returning home only when the street was quiet. That night, he sat awake long after Mia fell asleep, wrestling with the fear that he was dragging his daughter into something he couldn't control. The next morning, Emma arrived at his house before sunrise. No makeup, no armor, just Emma. She'd seen the headlines, she'd seen the videos. She stepped inside without waiting for permission, her expression drawn tight with worry. Ethan, I'm sorry. I never wanted this to touch Mia, or you. He shook his head. This isn't your fault. It's mine. I shouldn't have let any of this get so close. Her breath caught. Is that what you think I am? A risk? He hesitated, then whispered. I think you're someone who could cost me everything, if I'm not careful. She stepped closer, eyes fierce and pained. I would never take anything from you. I'm trying to add to your life, Ethan. Not take pieces of it away. He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time realized that she wasn't the storm threatening his life. She was a force pushing him forward, not pulling him under. Then stay, he said quietly. Emma's shoulders softened, a breath of relief escaping her. I wasn't going anywhere. Spring settled over Seattle with a softness that made the city feel cleaner, brighter, almost renewed. By the time the Brooks Foundation hosted its first rooftop gathering at Coldwell Innovations, Ethan had learned to breathe within spaces that once made him tighten his shoulders. He stood near the terrace railing, watching guests mingle beneath strings of warm lights, and tried to believe this strange, new world truly belonged to him. Mia darted between clusters of donors, proudly holding a sketchbook filled with drawings of families the foundation hoped to help. Ethan watched her with the quiet pride of a man who had survived enough storms to appreciate calm when it finally arrived. Across the terrace, Emma moved through the crowd with her usual composed elegance, though now there was a warmth in her eyes that softened the edges of her authority. She answered questions, shook hands, and addressed concerns with confidence. But every few minutes, her gaze drifted toward Ethan like a compass finding north. When the speeches ended and applause faded, she slipped away from the crowd and joined him at the edge of the terrace. You did well tonight, she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear as the breeze caught it. I didn't spill anything or break anything, he replied. I'm counting it as a win. She laughed softly. A year ago, you were fixing a faulty outlet in a school lounge. Now you're shaping policy for single parents across the city. You should be proud of yourself." He looked toward the terrace, toward Mia now, chatting with a volunteer. "I am," he said. "But none of this feels real without you." Emma turned toward him fully, her expression open and steady. "Ethan, you give me too much credit. You built your life. You raised Mia into someone extraordinary. I just recognized what the world kept overlooking." Her voice softened. "You made this foundation possible because you reminded me what matters." Before he could respond, she reached into her coat and pulled out a cream-colored envelope sealed with a small silver emblem. She placed it in his hand. "Open it tomorrow morning. Not tonight. Read it when everything is quiet." He frowned, but nodded, slipping it into his jacket just as Mia burst over, breathless. "Daddy, Miss Emma, they're cutting the cake." Emma let Mia pull her back toward the lights, glancing over her shoulder at Ethan with a look that carried far more than words. The next morning, in the stillness of dawn, Ethan opened the envelope at the kitchen table. Inside was a handwritten note. "You saved my life once, but you also saved the part of me I thought I lost. I don't want a future that doesn't include you. Will you marry me?" Beneath the note lay a mock-up of a wedding invitation with both their names intertwined. Mia entered sleepy-eyed just as Ethan wiped his eyes. "Daddy, what happened?" He lifted her into his lap. "Something wonderful." She read the card, gasped, and then grinned. "Is Miss Emma going to be my mom?" "If you want her to be," he whispered, "more than anything." That evening, when Emma returned to his porch, Ethan stepped into the doorway and held out the card. "Yes," he said simply, and the world seemed to settle into place. In the end, Ethan and Emma's story reminds us of a truth experts often emphasize: real transformation begins not with power or wealth, but with human connection. When people step beyond fear, beyond labels, and choose compassion over convenience, they rebuild more than their own lives, they reshape the world around them. This journey shows how dignity, kindness, and quiet courage can alter destinies more profoundly than any status or title. If stories like this move you, inspire you, or make you believe in second chances again, take a moment to like this video and subscribe for more dramatic, meaningful narratives. Your support helps these powerful stories reach others who may need them. And now, I want to hear from you. Comment below with just 2 or 3 words that capture what this story meant to you. A simple phrase is, "Enough, let your heart choose it."